The mansion on the hill stood like a sentinel, majestic, distant, untouchable. It was a place of grand halls and cold marble, where every corner whispered of wealth, yet echoed with silence. Inside, Mr. Dalton sat behind a glass desk in a room far too big for comfort. His fingers tapped idly on a tablet screen filled with spreadsheets, mergers, and board meetings. But his eyes were fixed on the screen in the corner of the room, a live feed from a single security camera. It showed the garden. In the garden sat a small figure, knees curled to her chest, gazing silently at the world beyond the wrought iron fence. Lily, his daughter, his only child, 8 years old, bright eyes, but not a single word in her entire life. Doctors had been flown in from across the globe. Therapists, specialists, and even spiritual healers had walked those halls, but none could explain her silence. She was not deaf. She was not cognitively impaired. She simply didn't speak, and no one could tell if she ever would. The silence between them was the only language they knew. Dalton wasn't the kind of man to admit helplessness, not when markets crashed or deals turned sour. He had rebuilt from ruin before, twice. But this silence, this chasm between father and daughter, it was the one thing he couldn't negotiate his way out of. He often wondered, did Lily even know who he was beyond the polished shoes and carefully combed hair? Did she feel the emptiness in the same way he did? Today, like every day, Lily sat under the old sycamore tree in the garden, her gaze focused far beyond the gates. And then something unusual happened. A ball, scuffed, sun-faded, alive with laughter, bounced over the iron fence and landed in the garden with a soft thump. 3 boys came skidding to a halt on the other side of the fence, out of breath, muddy, their laughter spilling over like music. "Oi, sorry!" one of them called, unsure if anyone could hear. Another boy climbed onto the low brick ledge beside the fence, peering in. Lily didn't flinch. She didn't move. The boy spotted her, sitting quietly watching them. The smallest one, freckles across his nose and eyes too big for his face, raised a hand and waved. Dalton, still watching from the security feed, stiffened. Not because the boys were near the estate, but because Lily blinked, slowly. Then, unbelievably, raised her hand and waved back. It was subtle, a ghost of a wave, but it was more movement than she had offered any therapist in years. Dalton stood up slowly, moving closer to the window now, looking out onto the garden himself. The boys were laughing, not at Lily, but as if inviting her into the joy of the moment. One mimed kicking the ball, another pointed at it, then at her, grinning. They didn't seem to know she was different, or maybe they didn't care. Lily tilted her head slightly. She didn't touch the ball yet, but she didn't retreat either. The boys lingered a moment longer before one of them, slightly older, probably around 10, gestured as if saying, "It's okay, keep it." Then they ran off, voices echoing through the streets. Lily stood, walked to the ball, bent down slowly, and picked it up. For the first time in his life, Mr. Dalton saw his daughter smile. Not a wide grin, not forced, just a small, soft pull at the corner of her lips, like a flower blooming in slow motion. He felt something shift inside him, and for a moment, amidst the silence of his mansion and the weight of his empire, a sound he hadn't heard in years echoed through his heart. Hope. The next morning, Lily was already sitting by the sycamore tree before the sun had fully risen. The dew clung to the blades of grass like tiny crystals, but she didn't seem to notice the cold. Her eyes weren't on the garden today. They were fixed on the fence, waiting. And then, there they were, the same 3 boys. They came trudging up the path beyond the estate, a worn soccer ball tucked under one arm, and that same unruly energy bouncing in their steps. Mr. Dalton, already awake and unusually restless, caught sight of them through the window. He told security not to interfere. Not yet. Something in his gut told him this. This was different. The boys spotted Lily immediately. One of them, the one with the wild curls and an oversized hoodie, grinned and gave her a theatrical bow before kicking the ball into the air and catching it on his head, balancing it for a second. Lily's lips twitched, her fingers curling in her lap. The smallest one, with the freckles, pointed at the ball, then to her. He mimed kicking it gently and tilted his head as if asking permission. Lily blinked once, slowly. She didn't speak, but then she stood up and took a single step toward the ball resting at her feet. A hush seemed to fall over the garden. She nudged the ball with her foot. It rolled a few inches, and the boys whooped, clapping like she'd just scored a goal. Lily flinched, startled at the sudden noise. But then, she laughed. It was soft, so faint that even Dalton, listening from the open balcony, almost thought he imagined it. But it was real, a sound he had never heard before, something between a giggle and a gasp, like a bird learning it had wings. And just like that, the days began to change. Each afternoon, the boys returned. They never entered the estate. They never crossed the iron fence. But that invisible line began to blur. They'd mime throwing the ball, then gently kick it to Lily through the bars. She'd stumble as she returned it, sometimes missing completely. But they didn't tease. Instead, they laughed with her, not at her, cheering even her smallest efforts. They played games that required no words, clapping patterns, shadow puppets, even silly dances. Lily mirrored their gestures, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Mr. Dalton began to notice her eating more, sleeping better, even humming. The change wasn't just in her, it was in him too. He started coming home earlier, stopped checking emails during dinner. He sat near the garden now, watching from a distance, not as a CEO, but as a father slowly remembering what fatherhood was meant to feel like. One evening, as the boys were leaving, the tallest one turned around and called out to Lily. "Same time tomorrow," he said. Lily tilted her head. Then, she raised a hand and gave a small thumbs up. Dalton's heart clenched. She understood. She responded. He stepped onto the patio as the boys vanished down the street. Lily turned, sensing his presence. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Two people who had lived in the same house but different worlds. He took a step forward. "You like them," he said gently. Lily didn't speak, but she nodded. Dalton knelt, lowering himself to her height. "Do you want to invite them for dinner?" he asked, unsure if she even grasped the question. She paused, then surprised him. She pointed at herself, then gestured in a sweeping arc. Clearly imitating the boy's dramatic bows, Dalton couldn't help but laugh. "Yes," he said, his voice softer than it had been in years. "You can invite them. Tomorrow." The fence had always kept the world out, but it turned out it had kept Lily in. And now, one soccer ball. The clouds gathered above the Dalton estate like slow-moving thoughts, gray, uncertain, heavy with promise. Rain hadn't touched the town in weeks, but today the sky wept a little. Still, the boys came. They always did now. Coats flapping in the wind, shoes soaked from puddles. The three of them arrived at their usual spot, just beyond the iron fence. And like every afternoon, Lily was already there, waiting under the sycamore tree, her pale pink hoodie zipped up to her chin, her hands tucked into the sleeves. "Ready, Lil?" shouted the tallest boy, tossing the soccer ball into the air. She nodded with enthusiasm, then pointed to the ball, mimicking his toss. Mr. Dalton stood on the patio, just far enough to give them space, just close enough to see her face. He was different now. The phone rarely left his pocket. The screens in his office often stayed black. He still wore his tailored suits, but he looked less like a statue these days, more like a man rediscovering the rhythm of life. The boys kicked the ball softly through the bars. Lily stopped it with her foot, wobbling slightly. She pressed her lips together in determination, then nudged the ball back. The boys whooped again, as if she had scored a World Cup goal. Rain began to fall in earnest. Not a downpour, but gentle, like a secret the sky was whispering to the earth. "Come on," the boy with the freckles called out. "Don't let a little rain stop you." He mimed opening the gate, then motioned for her to join them outside. Lily looked down at her shoes, then to the sky, then to her father. Dalton gave her a nod, a soft, trembling one. His throat was tight. Something deep within him swelled with pride and fear. Letting go, even a little, was terrifying. Lily walked slowly toward the gate. Her steps were unsure but steady, The boy stepped back as she reached it. She hesitated, then slipped through. And for the first time in 8 years, Lily Dalton stepped beyond the garden. She ran, not far, just a few feet, but she ran. Mud splashed on her jeans. Her hood fell back. Her hair stuck to her forehead. She laughed, laughed without reserve, chasing the ball as the boys gently kicked it toward her. She fell. They helped her up, and then it happened. The smallest boy shouted, "Kick it, Lily! Kick it hard!" The ball came to her. She steadied herself, took one breath, and then, in a voice so clear and bright it sliced through the rain like sunlight, "Ball!" The boys froze. The wind stilled. From the patio, Mr. Dalton staggered backward slightly, as if the sound had struck him in the chest. Lily stood, blinking in surprise, as if unsure she'd really said it. She looked up at the boys who were staring at her with open mouths. Then the freckled one shouted, "She talked! She talked!" And they erupted in cheers. "Do it again! Say it again! Lily, that was amazing!" She smiled wider than ever and said it again, this time stronger. "Ball." The boys clapped. They jumped. One of them hugged her without asking, and she let him. From the patio, Mr. Dalton's knees buckled. He sank to the stone floor, head in his hands. His body shook, not from rain, but from a storm of something he hadn't felt in years. Joy, grief, relief, everything. He didn't go inside. He walked slowly, carefully, toward them. The boys turned and fell quiet as the suited man approached. They didn't know what to expect. But Lily ran to him, and when she reached him, she didn't hide behind his legs like she used to. She took his hand. "Dad," she said. His breath caught. He looked down at her, the girl he had failed to reach, the daughter who had never spoken his name, and he choked back a sob. "Yes, Lily," he whispered, kneeling in the mud. "I'm here.